Welcome, everyone, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts on where the future areas for collaboration could be between the open infrastructure community and academia. And one of the areas that I really want to focus on is the edge, because I believe that is the next frontier that is yet to be tamed in terms of understanding how the edge is going to unfold and how open infrastructure can help make that happen more quickly and more effectively. Myself, I'm Cliff Grossner, and I'm the Executive Director of Research and a Technology Fellow at Omdia, which is brought to you by Informa Technologies. Well, let's jump into it. And what I always like to do is start most of my talks with a little bit of discussion about, what is the path we've been on and how does that path move towards the future. And one of the things we've been certainly doing in the last couple of years is working on optimizing how we do computation and optimizing that from on-prem data center to the cloud and building hybrid clouds. And it wasn't long before the market realized that that's good, but one cloud provider alone isn't going to be good enough because there are many specialized forms of compute, and we really need to create a compute ecosystem that covers all of that. And multi-clouds were born. With that, in 2019 and 2020, there's still a lot of work to do for us to build the multi-cloud, and many end users or compute-driven organizations are doing just that. But at the same time, we can already see on the horizon of 2021 and 2022 that AI and ML has taken a big shift. The technology has advanced. We have way more computational power than we did in the past. And the next step is really to look at automation around how we do compute, where we put our workloads, how we move them, and then even automation in terms of absorbing that into the actual applications themselves, leveraging AI and ML techniques potentially driven by the cloud for the cloud itself and for end user applications. We already know and can see in the distant future, maybe not so distant future, that edge computing is going to play a large role in where we want to go because of the demand for latency sensitive applications and the need to process very large data sets and needing to potentially do that near the edge. And we'll move to a very distributed computing environment, which has many big challenges. Now, one of the things as an analyst that's really important is put a roadmap like that up, sure, but the question is how big, how far, how fast. So when it comes to the hybrid and multi-cloud ecosystem, what I like to look at is shipments of servers in the world, because that gives us an idea of how things are going to play out and how fast. So if I look at 2018, we shipped about 11.3 million servers. And the composition of the market that consumed those servers was 42% went to enterprise buyers, so on-prem data centers, 43% went to cloud service providers, and 13 or 15%, went to telcos or communication service providers. And in absolute numbers for the enterprise, that was about 4.8 million of the 11.3 million servers that shipped. Now, looking forward to 2023, we projected 16.6 million servers will ship, and the enterprise will reduce in size to about 32% of servers shipped. But still, in absolute value, is growing, which means the on-premise enterprise data center is a very important part of the compute ecosystem from now and into the future. And we see that that is a new equilibrium point from our perspective. And of course, the cloud service providers continue to own more and more of the market at 46%, and the telcos grow to about 22% of the market by 2023. Well, that's our view on the multi-cloud ecosystem versus hybrid cloud versus on-prem. And then the next era that I mentioned was the move to AI and ML. And so here, what we like to track is the percent of servers shipped that have a coprocessor for AI and ML. And if we look at 2018, only about 2% of servers shipped, and most of those, the cloud providers, had a coprocessor for AI and ML. Our projection for 2023 is that about 15% of co-processors will have silicon in it specialized for AI and ML, and this will become more distributed, and we expect to see on-prem installed servers having this type of capability as well. So that gives us an idea of, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, adoption of AI and ML. How is that going to permeate through the compute environment? And then I'd like to come to edge. So with edge, we need to talk a little bit about what is the edge and where is it? In our perspective, the edge is demarcated by 20 milliseconds round trip time between the end user and the compute platform that's serving that end user. And there are three main edges that we track, or set of edge locations that we track. That's the communication service provider or telco edge, the enterprise edge, and the cloud service provider edge. Now, everyone has had lots of discussion, I think, around telco edge, and they think about the central office. We think about compute being placed near cell site towers, and potentially even compute being placed at demarcation points in enterprise businesses that are run by the telco or UCP equipment. The enterprise edge, well, one thinks about the shop floor, we think about retail outlets, we think about branch locations, and many more. And now perhaps with the new work at home regime, even in some cases now, the remote workers home office. When we talk about the cloud service providers, many people look at me and go, they have an edge, and I go, yes, they do. We all think about cloud providers as having centralized data centers, and in fact they do, but they also have many points of presence around the world, and those are often racks of equipment potentially in a co-location facility that are close to the end user, and that would constitute the cloud service provider edge. So like with hybrid cloud and with AI, of course, I'm going to share with you how things are moving in terms of the migration. And our view for 2019 was that the edge already does exist, and about 20% of servers shipped in 2019 were at the edge. Some people might be a little incredulous, and I will tell you that in my experience, just because we coin a new term for a new market doesn't mean that market didn't exist before, and we certainly need to count it. Now, and so it did exist, and we could see about 6% of servers shipped to cloud service providers went to their edge. About 12% of servers shipped ended up at the enterprise edge, and about 2% ended up at the telco edge. Now, all these edges are definitely growing, which is why there's excitement. And by 2024, we have the telco edge growing near 5 times as big, or consuming 4% of the servers shipped in 2024. We have the enterprise edge, about the same percent of the market, but still growing. And the cloud service provider edge growing very nicely, doubling in terms of percent of the market, and also in absolute value of server shipped. So we do see the edge taking an important part in the compute ecosystem moving forward. And one of the questions that people may ask is, what are the top applications that are being planned? And in our surveys of end users, we asked them, what are the most important edge apps? And what percolated to the top were things like video content delivery, things like video content in immersive environments or immersive situations like in Stadia. Autonomous vehicles were pretty high on the list. AR, VR were also very important from our respondents. The automated factory using potentially IoT sensors. Gaming came pretty high on the top of the list. Many people would be not surprised at this list, but it certainly confirms our thinking that these are where investment is going to be made. And then we saw some other elements around private LTE and electronic surveillance and monitoring supply chain management. And bottom of the list is actually smart cities, probably because the money there is public money and will probably come slower. Now, one of the things we asked, which is also very important to get a handle on, what are some of the hurdles to the edge rolling out? And many of the respondents said definitely lots of technical hurdles, We need to manage and monitor and operate and control hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands of edge locations. We need to look at how are we going to place AI inference engines at the edge? How are we going to synchronize data across the edge and centralized environments? What's going to be a common API? Are there standard software stacks that we're going to need to develop? So many, many, many hurdles that are going to need cooperation between academia and the rest of the world to solve. And in fact, some of the innovations that are being called for are around integration of edge with cloud and making that very seamless. Developers are going to need to write once and be able to compute in many locations across many heterogeneous types of hardware environments. We're going to need new innovations in hardened equipment that can handle some of the harsh environments that might exist in, for example, some of the early areas that are rolling out in terms of energy, oil and gas, and under the drilling rig. Security, of course, is going to be paramount throughout. If we're going to have compute on such a wide and distributed environment, we absolutely need to understand the security implications and how that's going to roll out. So lots of new innovations needed, lots of hurdles to solve, and some of the key takeaways before I do my final summary on where the areas of collaboration could be that I want to leave you with is that compute will be delivered from the cloud to the edge, and we see the progression from hybrid cloud to multi-cloud to automation of compute, and then computing on a very distributed geography as we move to the edge. I think edge really is the next frontier, as I said at the beginning of my presentation. I hope you can now see that in what I said and have a better idea of what we look at as the edge and how fast the edge is going to roll out. And the fact that the edge already exists and it's more an acceleration of moving compute out to the edge that we're going to see over the next few years. And we will have a lot of hurdles and challenges to overcome, a lot of new innovations to get to, and that leads me to my discussion on what truly are the areas for collaboration. And so just as a recap, some of the things that I know I'm going to be watching for in our research going forward is looking at what are new orchestration techniques and stacks that are going to be available for managing thousands of geographically distributed nodes, troubleshooting, making sure things are going right. It will be not possible for humans to take care of that. A new economic software stacks that allow, as I said, write once and deploy in many diverse environments for developers. That's going to be a critical barrier remover to solve this problem. New ways to synchronize data and maintain consistency of data sets across many data point locations when we're processing data at multiple locations and we have to ingest data at multiple locations but have a coherent set of data. We're doing a lot of work now in ruggedized and survivable equipment designs, from wall boxes to enclosures that can be dropped from airplanes on parachutes into a field, perhaps in a desert somewhere, and set up and get going. Automation will be key to solving this problem. Automation of the compute ecosystem, which we need to have continuous operations, no matter whether we have multiple connections failures or not. And of course, security, as I mentioned already, there'll be many new attack surfaces. We can't have ports left open. We really do need to have the ability to automatically detect malignant behaviors and remediate. And of course, it's not going to fly unless we have the understanding of the financial side of things. What are the financial models we're going to need to be able to prove out these business cases so that businesses can feel free to take on and invest in new innovation, commercialize, and take it to market. And with that, I'd like to wrap up my presentation and thank everyone for spending their attention for the last 15 minutes.
Okay, I don't know if I'm live, but I hope I am. Oh, yes, I am. And I've got a couple of questions, and the first one could take me way more than 4 minutes, but I'll try to be brief. It's with respect to COVID-19 and the impact on smart cities. And I'll start by saying that COVID-19 is something we've studied quite a bit the last little while. And when it comes to compute infrastructure, I have a hard time to find where the overall market drops much. And based on the early earnings we've seen from Intel and AMD and some of the others, we have seen a shift of investment from one market segment that is, perhaps the enterprise proper to communication service providers and cloud service providers, but the overall market for 2020 actually appears pretty stable. What we don't know is, as the envelope of spend changes out to 2021 and 22, with what I believe is an imperative global economic slowdown, what happens? Now, with respect to smart cities, for sure, there may be some projects that are going to be put on definite hold. City budgets are stretched, provincial budgets are stretched. However, the other side of it is governments need to continue to invest. If they don't spend, we're going to be in a deep recession for a long time. And I already have heard of a few instances where cities have said, you know what, we're going to take this extra money we need to spend to put people back to work, and we're going to do some innovative new things, and that could be smart city investments at the edge. So I would say that I would keep my eye open. I don't think it's all black or white, and I think there's still going to be lots of opportunity. Let me see. The other question I had, if I have any time left, was in the short term, taking into account the pandemic, okay, the impact on business. The other element I would talk about is we've seen some very important opportunities around the fact that now people are work from home and we have to do distance learning. And I think that any innovations that allow us to hook up a remote location, even a home location, single ship drop, and empower that edge with security and get it hooked up for remote work and distance learning could be a very exciting opportunity. And don't forget that also would need the ability to manage remotely all of that environment. So I think with that, I believe my 4 minutes must be up. So thank you very much.